Welcome to Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. I'm your host, Nick Capozzi, and it's Wednesday, so we are joined today by none other than our injury expert, Seth Kline, a.k.a. Seth the Sportsman. That's where you can follow on Twitter, Seth the DA Sportsman. Seth, welcome to Razzball Radio. How are you today, brother?
I'm great this morning. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, are you kidding, man? Love having you on, buddy, because injuries. We're taping a little late today because there was a little action going on at your place in Los Angeles today. What happened?
Uh, I went down to walk the dog and saw some SWAT team in the building next to me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's the second time they've raided the same apartment. It looks like they came up empty-handed, but these people next door just keep getting away with it, I guess.
Good morning. It's Wednesday. I'm going to go downstairs to get my coffee, and there's SWAT. I mean,
Yeah.
that's little bananas, bro.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit, just a smidge of news first. There's not a whole lot today, but we'll do that before we break down the injuries to some of the key guys out there. I don't know if you heard this, but Morris Claiborne of the Dallas Cowboys was told by the team he's not going to be starting anymore, and he went AWOL. He just left the facility, just took off. What else could happen to the Cowboys this year? I mean, what could make this worse, this start to the season?
Well, Josh Brent will be playing in Week 11, so that may make things a little bit worse for that team. It's not surprising. Something always seems to be happening around the Cowboys camp. They're always in some drama.
I was just going to say that. They're like the drama queens of the NFL.
Yeah. Remember, it was like 20 years ago they were America's team, and now they're just not
Kim
good.
Kardashian's team.
Yeah. But, he's not very good. It was a wasted draft pick. But, have some class, be a man. These pretty
Seriously.
boys, either they're getting arrested or they're going AWOL. I think Demetri Patterson did the same thing for the Jets this offseason. Hey, I got demoted. I'm just going to leave. Like, can you imagine if anyone else did that in their normal job? Like, if they'd ever get a job anywhere else again. If like, I went for a job interview. So tell me about your last job. Oh, I just walked up and left one day, So no loss for them, really. They're going to put Skandrick back in the secondary. But definitely a waste of a top 10 draft pick.
Absolutely. So here was something else that I thought was really interesting because Rex Ryan gave Geno Smith the dreaded vote of confidence. So I still think they're going to roll with Geno, but the team's been more competitive than I thought they would be. There's more talent there than I realized. So is there any chance we see Michael Vick? And the only reason I bring it up is that he's not the player he was 2 years ago, never mind, 7 years ago. But if he got in there, he's interesting, especially in a super flex league where you could start a second quarterback potentially. What do you think percentage-wise the odds are we see Michael Vick?
Percentage-wise, we see him as a starter, maybe 30%. Percentage-wise, we see him on the field, might be closer to 70%. I think you may see some rotations, trick plays, wildcat type things. Right. But right now, I think that they're going to roll still with Smith. Smith hasn't been that bad. He had a bad game, but if you go back to the last 4 games from last year and his first 2 games this year, he's markedly improved. Completion percentage up, turnovers down, touchdowns up. So I don't know if this is a guy that we're going to ever see be great, but right now he's young, Vic's older. There's no future with him. I think you're going to see them stick with Smith a little while longer.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I just think that if they do get close to the playoffs or in playoff contention and Smith keeps melting down, I could see a situation because, Rex Ryan is entrenched there. I'm surprised he's still there, to be honest with you, but, at some point he has to be playing for his job. So it'll be interesting. I'm just, if you have a really deep bench, might be worth picking up Vic.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Definitely in a super flex or a 2 QB league.
All right, so we're going to start talking about some injuries. Texans right now lead the NFL in rush to pass ratio. They run the ball 57% of the time. And Arian Foster, who sat out surprisingly last week, this is the same hamstring that's been bothering him apparently for the last 2 months. Okay, so I had to make a deal because I don't know about you, but I am decimated by bye. I didn't realize this year how many Cardinals, Seahawks, Browns. I'm just destroyed this week on bye week. So in a dynasty league, I had to make a trade. And I wasn't crazy about doing it, but I think I maybe got some upside there. I traded Terrence West because I like Crowell. I think Crowell's the guy long term who could emerge as the number one back there. So I traded Terrence West and I got Alfred Blue. And my logic there is that team is built to run the ball. So if Foster continues to have injuries, Blue's next in line. He looked pretty good last week. Did I make a terrible trade? I'm not going to say I made a good trade, but was it a terrible trade or a mediocre trade for me?
I think this season it's a decent trade. For Dynasty, I do like West a little bit better, but like you said, I did the same thing. I checked out my teams yesterday. I'm like, holy cow! I had like 3 spots that were buys, and I went to my bench. I didn't even have those positions to fill. Both my tight ends were on buys, so I'm with you there. Sometimes you gotta scramble to fill your rosters this week, especially if you're 3-0, 2-1. Not necessarily that important. You can get by one week with a dud at one position, but if you're 0-3 or 1-2, I mean, you can't go 0-4, you can't go 1-3, and you got to make moves like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, on this team, I have 6 bench spots, and right now, because I had to pick up Kirk Cousins because I was rolling with RG3, I also have Russell Wilson, but he's on a bye. So if you look at my 6 bench spots, it's buy RG3. I mean that's with McCoy, Shady McCoy in the starting lineup, who looks to be okay. Although I panicked this morning because I go to the Yahoo page and there's a big O next to his name for out, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But McCoy's okay.
Yeah, he's okay. Yahoo, I've noticed this year, if a player gets hurt or leaves the game for a couple plays the week before, they put the O next to the name. I've actually had a few comments like, "Oh, is this person out this week?" And I said, "No, they played the entire second half." So I think Yahoo needs to address that situation. But no, he's okay. He did miss a little bit of time in the first half he got hit in the head. People were saying maybe concussion. Checked out okay. Ended up having 20 carries, although not successfully, 20 yards on 20 carries. But he did finish out the game, and so far is fine this week.
All right, so Seth writes the injury column every Wednesday at razzball.com. Also does the start sits on Friday. We're going to get into more injuries right after this break. This is Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. Welcome back, Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. Nick Capozzi, Seth Kline, talking injuries because it is Wednesday. Dennis Pitta has successful surgery done for the year. I think the bigger question here, and that's very disappointing because a lot of people really like Pitta. He had 15 targets the first week. Torrey Smith has worked his way out of that offense. So there was an opportunity here for Pitta to maybe jump into the top 4 or 5 of tight ends. I don't think that's a ridiculous statement. Hurts his hip again, has surgery, stunned for the year. But I think the bigger question here, especially in Dynasty and Keeper Leagues, is he done for his career?
I think it's possible. Re-injured the same hip, not a body part that you really want to re-injure. It's not like he's breaking his arm again or something like that. For a football player, you need that to swivel and turn and plant. I think it's possible his career may be over. I'm sure he'll give it another shot. You rarely see players that young just kind of hang him up. But I don't know if he'll be as good as he ever was. And yeah, it's a tough situation for owners. Obviously got to drop, and in dynasty leagues, it's probably a consideration as well, assuming that he's never going to be the player he was. I actually traded for him about 6 hours before that game on Sunday. So not a dynasty league. It hurt, had to drop him, but it's football. It happens.
How high are you on Owen Daniels coming into that offense now?
Not too much. I do think, obviously, he will get a lot of those targets. I don't think he'll completely, replace the volume there. They've used him a lot in goal line this year. He has vultured a few touchdowns. He's older, he's slower, but in a Kubiak offense, he loves the tight ends. I think you could see. I think you may see 8 to 10 touchdowns out of him this year, but I'm not going to expect more than about 500, 600 yards total, and that's probably on the high end.
And you know what? I don't have my notes from yesterday, and I'm gonna butcher the name, but there's the backup fullback there, Juszczyk, I think is his last name, and he's a guy that could get worked into that offense. I'm not even trying to spell it, but it starts with a J. It's a
lot of C's and Z's. It's like Krzyzewski. So
yeah, it's a good Polish name.
Yeah.
Have some pierogies for me. But yeah, so he's a guy that could get worked in. I apologize, I don't have his name, but it's Juszczyk, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a Żywiec for you, Mr. Juszczyk. You ever had Polish beer, Seth?
I don't think so. No.
All right, it's delicious. You ever get a chance? Polish beer, Żywiec, good stuff. All right, speaking of good stuff, Alshon Jeffrey had an amazing game against the Jets because Brandon Marshall went out, retweaked the ankle. Any update on what's happening with him?
Marshall, I haven't heard any updates as of right now. If I'm the Bears, I'm smart. I'm holding him out of practice all week. They have a short week after that Monday night game. Obviously, last week, retweaked the ankle. I mean, he's a big part of that team. They need him healthy, and we all know about injuries. You can't keep playing on it. He's going to keep hurting it. He needs some time off. If I'm the Bears, I actually may even think about sitting him out a week, although it's a tough week to do so against division rival Packers. But a week off, a full week off, and then another week off would do wonders for that. I mean, get the swelling to go down. He's doing that weekly show on CBS now too. He's going working a team, so he's flying all around. He's practicing. He's playing on a hurt ankle, and maybe time to chill a little bit for him right now. And I think for fantasy owners, they'd rather have him get healthy, sit out 1 week, than keep re-injuring it and being ineffective the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, if you got Martellus Bennett, you want to get him in your lineup. Santonio Holmes too. Hate to say it, but if Marshall sits, he could have some value. But hopefully, you are not digging that deep. But again, with the bye week chaos that's happening this week, that might be something you are forced to do. Okay, Matt Castle done for the year, officially on IR. This is now Teddy Bridgewater's team. Bridgewater is going to be an interesting quarterback to watch. Obviously, I'm not rostering him anywhere at this point except in the deepest of leagues. But I'll be curious to see how the skill position players, because now you're down your veteran quarterback, you're down your Hall of Fame running back. I don't know how this offense is going to look. And I've, Cordero Patterson in a few leagues. I'm definitely concerned. But Kyle Rudolph is a guy I also have in a ton of leagues. What's happening with him right now?
Rudolph, he's going to be out about, 6 weeks or more. That sports hernia surgery, not an easy recovery. Again, for a football player, groin area, you don't really want to mess with that. In most leagues, I'm dropping him. Tight end is not a position I'm worth stashing for, half the rest of the season. And especially there are guys on waivers. And, he wasn't even putting up stats, when he was playing. I think 10 catches, 96 yards, 3 games. And with Bridgewater, it's not like he's going back to a Brett Favre run team or something like that. He's not going to have as much success with Bridgewater. I'm dropping him, except in Dynasty and the deepest of leagues.
All right, I am developing an ulcer this year because of Jamal Charles, who in an expert league I'm in, I took him with a second overall pick, and I'm regretting it. Although I would have taken AP ahead of him. To me, going into the season, it was AP Charles, McCoy, and then Charles or AP, depending on what kind of mood I was in and the how the league was set up. A, is he going to play this week? And B, how much is Niall Davis, who's been pretty darn good, going to cut into his playing time going forward?
I do think he's going to play this week. Had the week off, has an extra day this week because they're playing Monday night. So I think he's going to play. There's a slight possibility they hold him out because of how well Davis ran last week. But if he does play, Davis is going to obviously have his carries reduced a lot. You may see in the first couple of weeks him get maybe 7 to 8 carries just to take the pressure off Charles. But right now, if you were one of those guys that spent all that money on Davis, used your waiver on Davis, even traded for Davis, try to trade him now while he's at the top before any more news comes out about Charles playing this week, because I don't see really that injury getting worse unless he re-injures it. They're not gonna call all our teams tomorrow and say, hey, he's out for the season type of thing. So sell Davis while you can.
Yeah, real quick, Andy Reid doesn't play Jamal Charles, and then as soon as Charles is out, just runs the bejesus out of Niall Davis. So frustrating. So frustrating. All right, well, I'm going to relieve this frustration because we're going to go to break right now. We're going to come back, talk more injuries with Seth. I'm Nick. This is Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. Welcome back, Razzball Radio. Nick Capozzi, Seth Kline, talking injuries. Unfortunately, Danny Woodhead done for the year a lot of carries for Donald Brown last week. Had 32. They can't give him the ball that much. Who potentially could kind of emerge behind him here to actually get some of those touches? Is there any upside that we're not seeing on the bench?
I mean, the only other guy really there right now is Brandon Oliver. I don't think he's that great right now. I don't think they're going to give him the ball much. He may get some of the Woodhead type plays, but I think you're going to continue seeing them pound the ball with Brown until Matthews comes back in a couple weeks.
Okay. Let's go to Atlanta. They're on the road again this week, and they're such a roller coaster team. So good at home, so bad on the road. And I was looking at that game, and it was tempting to take the Falcons. But yeah, I just can't touch them on the road until I see something else, especially if Roddy White's not back. Now, before you tell me what's happening with Roddy White, tie in as well for me. Devin Hester, they're saying he's going to be worked more into the offense. He's had 7 catches for 126 yards, a 20-yard rush TV. Plus, he's dangerous in the return game. So, A, what's happening with Roddy? And B, would you take a flyer on Hester?
He's worth a flyer. I think a lot of his production, aside from the return game and some trick plays, is tied into whether White plays and plays a full complement of snaps. I don't think with Julio and White out there that you're seeing, more than 1 to 2 targets for Hester a game, but especially with Harry Douglas as well in there. But yeah, he's worth it because right now White is not looking healthy.
Right.
He didn't look healthy last year. He's getting up there in age, and we saw what Hester can do when he's given a little more playing time.
Okay, Eric Decker came out of the game Monday night. Didn't apparently suffer a setback, but as far as I'm concerned, if you're feeling tightness, it's somewhat of a setback. I actually picked up Curly in a couple leagues. I had to start him this week. What's the story with Eric Decker? Is this going to be kind of, I mean, that's the problem with hamstrings. It can be an ongoing situation. Are we going to see him back this week, or is it maybe similar to the Brandon Marshall situation because they're so dependent on Decker in that offense because, Curly's your number 2. What's the story there?
I think he's going to sit this week. I agree with you. It's definitely a setback no matter what the coach speak they're using. He played, 5 minutes, re-injured and left. Hamstring again, very, very tenuous injury. You could feel great and you could cut and plant or whatever, re-injure it, re-aggravate it. I think if they're smart, they sit him this week, let him get some rest. The only way the thing is going to get healthier is if he sits and rests on it.
All right, speaking of getting healthy, Jordan Reed can't seem to ever do that. Here's my question. He's not supposed to go today or Thursday against the G-Men. Also, there's even talk he might miss week 5. But here's my argument. Why are we even considering him right now? Because Niles Paul has looked so good. Why would Washington even take the opportunity of putting Reed back in there? I don't know that he's that much more talented than Niles Paul.
I think he might be a little more talented than Niles Paul, but I don't see the reason why they would rush him. For sure, when he comes back, that's a great compliment, great duo right there to go along with the dynamic receivers they have. But again, no rush. Paul's been playing great. Cousins looked great with him last week, and even RG3 looked great with him before. They found a little gem in Paul, and they're going to use him.
You know what? I actually rewatched the entire Washington-Philadelphia game yesterday because that's my job now. That's what I have to do on Tuesdays is rewatch all the games. I love my job. They have so many weapons in Washington. And as they were kind of amassing that talent in the offseason, I was wondering, I'm like, well, how's it all going to work? How's it going to jive? But my goodness, that is one heck of a high-powered offense. And I picked up Kirk Cousins in a lot of leagues, and I'm happy I did that because they are going to put up a ton of points. I didn't think they'd be able to get it to everyone, but they have so far.
Yeah, if only they had a defense, right?
Oh, man. Well, but that's good for fantasy. Let the defense be terrible so, they can keep
For us.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. I'm not a Washington fan. Mike Tolbert on the IR, out at least until week 13. Look, Carolina's not going to run the ball a lot. But so Tolbert's out. D'Angelo, they're kind of iffy on him. Jay Stu is out. I mean, we might see Fozzie coming out here. This is a very messy backfield, but at the same time, it can't just be Cam to Olsen and Benjamin all day. Is anyone going to emerge there, or is this just a wasteland that we don't care about?
I have to think it's the latter. Aside from Cam, Benjamin, and Olsen, I don't really see a lot of upside there. They have a young running back, Darren Reeves. Maybe you'll see him start to get carries in a few weeks, and he has the potential of being explosive. But that team is pretty much barren wasteland of fantasy talent.
All right, Carson Palmer. Now that I'm based here in Phoenix, I've been watching actually all the Cardinals games, and I'm heavily invested in the offensive weaponry on that team. Carson Palmer tossing the ball on the sidelines. They have the bye week this week, and now he's promising he's going to be back against Denver, which is going to be a pretty exciting game because the Cards are 3-0. But for me, as a guy who's heavily invested in Floyd, and to an extent Fitzgerald, and I've got Ellington all over the place, Stanton wasn't bad last week. And part of me is kind of thinking, like we were talking about with Roddy White and Brandon Marshall, let Palmer sit until, it's a nerve. This is, again, not a broken bone. Let that fully heal, because Stanton's done not bad. I didn't think he would, but he's been pretty good.
Yeah, Stanton's not bad. I agree with you. Let it fully heal. From what I hear, Palmer was saying that it was about 100%, close to 100%. But again, that's something that can turn in a moment. I'm a little invested in Palmer in one league, in a super flex league. He's my second quarterback, so I'm hoping he comes back. But again, I would rather have him come back healthy. And if you're a Cardinals fan, I still think that Palmer's the guy you want there. He's built a little bit of rapport with the receivers, but it's great to have a backup like Stanton, who's showed last week that he can lead the team to a victory.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to give you. All right, stop what you're doing. Whatever you're doing right now, just wait. I'm going to give you a very valuable piece of fantasy sports information. Are you ready? You got a pen out? Write this down. At Seth the Sportsman, DA, at Seth the Sportsman, because Seth is one of the guys you absolutely want to interact on Twitter with. This guy is so knowledgeable, and he's handsome. What else can I tell you? Seth, great job as always, man. We love having you here on Wednesdays covering injuries for us. Seth the Sportsman, Nick Capozzi. This is Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. Tomorrow we'll be back. We're going to cover the Thursday night matchup as well as daily fantasy plays for this week. See you tomorrow.